much dirt in all Louisiana. Get out of the damn tub!
Now, this review was highly requested and with a good reason. Someone called this movie a Southern cult classic, and I must agree, this movie definitely falls under that category. I hadn't seen this movie since I was a child, so viewing it now that I'm older was a brand new experience. This movie is deep, and I'm sure everyone has their opinions about it. In fact, you've probably seen many TikToks breaking this movie down as well. But as always, I have my thoughts about this film, and you know we're going to talk about it. So let's get into it. So the movie opens up with a narration from an older Eve. She tells us about the summer in which she was 10, her sister Sicily was 14, and her little brother Poe was 9. The same summer that she killed her father. She also details the history of her family and their land. Quite a way to start off a movie. The score, the visuals, everything was just on point. So we go back in time to when they were kids. Their parents are having a party, and baby, this guy is enjoying himself. We also close in on this couple for a second, and the rumor mill is buzzing. Turns out that this lady has a reputation of entertaining many suitors. Child. We'll soon see if that's in fact true or not. We finally meet Roz and Miselle, and let's just acknowledge the visual perfection of both Lynn Whitfield and Debbie Morgan. Just stunning. We also are introduced to Miselle's husband, Harry, who is trying to sneak pics of them. And finally, we meet Eve, who has taken it upon herself to give out special chocolates to the guests. 3 minutes into this movie, and I'm already pointing out cringe things like her offering him a kiss and a chocolate. Harry then pulls a coin out of nowhere and asks her what could he get for it, and she then offers him 2 kisses and all the chocolate he could eat. Again, cringe. Why is a 10-year-old offering kisses to anybody, let alone a grown-ass man that happens to be her uncle? It's made very clear that Eve is mischievous as hell and jealous-hearted, because when her brother runs up to their mother to give her a hug, she offers him some chocolate, and it's only when he bites it that she lets him know that it's actually chocolate-covered bees. No lie, I would have kicked her ass for that one. We then meet Sicily, the oldest sibling, who scolds them for running in the house, but then has them drink champagne with her. All these kids are bad as hell. After this, we finally meet Luis, their father, who is the town's only black doctor, but for this review, we will be referring to him as Dr. Feelgood. That's the name, and we're sticking to it. So, Dr. Feelgood is dancing with this lady, Mrs. Monroe. You know, the one that everyone suspects a little loose. And they are getting a little too friendly on the dance floor. All in front of his wife, in front of his mama, in front of the kids, in front of this lady's husband, who's not happy about it. Meanwhile, Roz is cheesing. I mean, clearly all this is completely going above her head. Alerts are on silent. After they get done dancing, he sees Sicily and then offers to dance with her. Again, Eve's jealousy starts to peak as she sees her sister getting some attention, and she runs off to the backyard shed. Eve ends up falling asleep in the shed and wakes up to see her daddy having sex with Mrs. Monroe. Just to traumatize the poor child. And then Dr. Feelgood turns around and introduces this woman, who he was having sex with, to his daughter. Like everything's cool.
You remember Mrs. Monroe, right?
Almost gave me a heart attack.
Let's hope. You out here having sex with this man, and your husband and his wife is inside. The fuck. Anyway, Miss Monroe excuses herself, and Dr. Feelgood takes this time to talk to his daughter. Really, he was trying to gauge if she was going to tell or not. But yeah.
Daddy loves you so much.
You love Mama?
He then tells Eve that her mother is the most beautiful woman in the world and that he will always love her. But the way he says it, it's almost like it's a rehearsed answer. Like that's what he's supposed to say versus how he really feels. Eve then asks him why he never dances with her at parties like he does with Sicily. After he tells her that from now on he'll dance with her at every party, she hugs him and ultimately forgets that this man just cheated on her mama. Roz comes out to get Eve and tells her that it's time for bed.
You sober? Yes, ma'am.
Just barely.
As she urges her to go to bed with her siblings, she can tell that something is off with her. She asks Dr. Feelgood about it, but he assures her that everything is fine. She then urges him to come inside, but he insists on staying outside a little longer. Child, his ass was really just trying to relax after dodging a bullet. For today. As Eve is getting dressed to go to bed, Sicily asks her where she had been for most of the night. Just that one question causes her to start crying, and then she finally confesses that she saw their daddy rubbing up on Mrs. Monroe. Sicily instantly doubts her, but she gets emotional at the same time. She then feeds Eve another version of her story, you know, the one that she saw with her very own eyes. So the new version is that she saw them walking into the shed, laughing, drunk, and tripping on their own 2 feet, not on each other's privates.
You sure? I'm certain. I mean, what would Daddy want with Maddie Moreau?
We're going to discuss this later in this review, but remember this scene. Later, Dr. Feelgood and Harry get into a drunken fight outside. They are talking shit and threatening to go upside each other's head.
Nigga, just because you a doctor, you think you know every fucking thing. You won't know every fucking thing.
Stop it, it's late. You want to raise the dead?
Roz tells Sicily to get back inside, but she refuses until her dad comes back in. Just too grown for her own good. Miselle takes the keys from Harry and drives him home. For a moment, you see Harry's head tilt back, and then we transition into a vision that Eve has. So in the vision, she sees and hears different things that suggest that Harry is dead. We also see the coin that he gave her for a quick second. I'm thinking when he gave her that coin, he gave away his luck or protection maybe? I'm not sure. But we fast forward to Eve, who's at the cemetery where she places 3 flowers on 3 different caskets. One for Harry, one for Maynard, and one for Anderson, all the late husbands of Miselle, her aunt. She then goes to visit Miselle, who is understandably depressed, laid up in the bed, sulking. Eve is such a good niece. She tries to get her up and dress for her clients that will soon come. Listen, Debbie has the prettiest face ever. Just perfection. Anyway, Miselle finally gets up and dressed. Eve asks her which one she loved best, or which husband she loved best. She tells her that she loved all of them for different reasons. She then discusses her gift. She's a seer, and she can see people's future by just touching them, but for some reason, she was never able to see her husband's futures. She then goes off to read her clients and tells Eve that she can stay and be nosy as long as she's quiet. So she has a client come, and her client is desperately looking for her son.
It's my boy. My boy's run off and I don't know where. I can't take it anymore. I have to know.
Miselle is able to see the son is somewhere in a bathroom doing drugs. She then tells the client that her son is still alive and she'll be able to find him in Detroit at a hospital. She then has another client come, and her story is heartbreaking because her niece spent all her money. She then gives the lady instructions so that she can get back at the niece, I'm assuming. I'm not sure. This has to be an overwhelming gift to have, but at the same time, you can help so many. One thing that I find interesting is that Miselle knew exactly what to do for that situation. It's crazy how at one point in time we were equipped with the tools to fight off so much to protect ourselves from harm, evil intentions and sickness, but somewhere down the line we were told that it was of the devil or evil. I don't know the complexities of it all, but it is interesting. So we fast forward to Miselle and Eve finally making it back home, and they walk in to see Roz crying. So as the kids are eavesdropping, we overhear Roz say something about a woman calling her house and how she told her she had 3 of Dr. Feelgood's babies. And that's all I could hear because Sicily comes in and interrupts Eve and Poe while they're listening. She threatens to tell on them, so they run away while her nosy self sits down to listen. Soon after, Dr. Feelgood comes home and Sicily tries to warn him that her mom, Miselle, and his mama are mad at him. Child, he could care less.
Who, them? They always mad.
Anyway, so the next day, Eve accompanies her philandering daddy as he makes some house calls. He visits this lady who had visited Miselle earlier. And then he visits this feline in heat.
Doctor, could you give me something for the pain?
Go on outside and play.
This no good bastard, while his daughter is there, it's like they could care less about the kids seeing this. I mean, damn. So after Dr. Feelgood does his job, I guess, him and Eve are walking and she decides to flat out ask him if he has any outside kids.
You ever want other kids?
Mom and I are perfectly happy with the 3 kids we got.
No, I mean other kids, besides us.
Now, what I like about Eve is that she asks the right questions. And yes, it may have been grown folks' business, but damn, ain't nobody else asking him. Also, I like how Eve sees her dad for who he is versus Sicily, who lives in a fantasy world or creates her own fantasy version of her daddy. Just something I noticed. So, Miselle and Roz are walking. Both of them are in a bad mood and failing at cheering each other up. Roz tells Miselle what she thought of Dr. Feelgood when she first met him, how she saw him heal other people and thought he would take good care of her, but soon after she realized that he was just a man, nothing special, not exempt from doing what any other man does. So Miselle tells her that one day her brother will stop looking for what he already has and that her and her brother are 2 sides of a coin. We will learn what she means by this later. While they're at the market, Roz comes across a fortune teller and baby Miselle wants no parts.
Well, let's get our fortunes told. Not by her.
So Roz steps to the fortune teller and asks her for a reading. The fortune teller is able to see her pain and tells her that the cause of that pain will go away soon, and not the way she imagined. She tells her to stay quiet and wait, and that sometimes a soldier falls on his own sword. She ends the reading by telling Roz to look to her children.
Dollar.
Now, Roz was wanting a little more, but really she gave her a lot of info in hindsight. Mind your business. It's not your battle to fight or fix, and worry about your kids instead of worrying about your thought of a husband, because he's going to get his. See? Simple. So after Roz steps away, Miselle steps up to the plate.
Some things are better left unsaid. I paid you $1, old woman. Now tell my fortune. I don't need no cat bones to tell your fortune, Miselle Batiste.
Now, I don't know if the fortune teller read her fortune or was just being spiteful, but basically she told her that she'd always be cursed and that the next man she marries will die and it will always be that way. The way she was acting, you would think she stole one of her men or something. I don't know. That's the energy she's giving. Either way, Miselle was not trying to hear that shit.
You're an old lying witch!
As Miselle and Roz are walking away, Miselle has a vision where she sees images of a train, a man in a suit and a hat, and a quick image of Eve falling down, and she instantly becomes overwhelmed and faints. So we go back to the kids. Poe and Eve are out on the bayou being bad, per usual. Sicily is sitting by the house reading a book when Roz and Miselle come running up screaming for the kids. The vision that Miselle had has spooked them and they are scared for the kids. So scared that Roz insists that they not leave the house until Miselle feels that it's okay or safe for them to do so. Dr. Feelgood thinks Roz is being ridiculous and that Miselle is being crazy per usual. While his mama agrees that Miselle can be a bit crazy, her visions never lie. Sicily thinks it's ridiculous too, of course, because whatever her daddy says is law. But Roz puts her foot down.
What if we promise not to play in traffic?
Don't you use that tone of voice with me, Sicily Batiste. And don't be rolling your eyes at your father behind my back.
You're looking right at us, Mama. Nothing ever happens behind your back.
So, of course, Dr. Feelgood goes on to announce his departure. He's going to see his patients on a Sunday. And baby Eve says this line, and I hollered.
Some sickness is hard to put a finger on.
Like I said, Eve knew what and how her father was, and nobody was going to sell her a fantasy. Not even her sister. Dr. Feelgood goes to get his ego boost from his delusional ass daughter.
You love your daddy, baby.
You know I do.
That's all I need.
Then Sicily, grown ass, goes to her mother and gives her a piece of her mind, calling her ridiculous. But baby Ross sets her straight.
If you're lucky, you might live long enough to one day have a husband and children of your own. But until then, this is my house and you will do as I say. Do you understand? I said, do you understand?
Yes, ma'am.
She calmed that attitude real quick, as she should. So of course, the kids are bored and stir crazy. Sicily and Eve are reciting Shakespeare. Poe is bouncing balls off the wall. There is nothing to do. Later, Eve is ready to stir up some trouble, so she tries to see what her sister is doing in the bathroom, but she doesn't want to be bothered. Then she decides to plant a snake on her brother's pillow. Just bad for no reason. She then goes to the kitchen where her mother is going full Iron Chef and almost cuts her finger off.
God damn it.
I heard you. You said God damn it.
She starts reciting Shakespeare to her mother, but she's not paying her no attention. Shortly after, Poe starts screaming at the top of his lungs. I guess he found that snake that Eve planted. While this is happening, Miselle arrives with plenty of games and things to keep the kids occupied, but Eve is not interested. She is bothered, okay?
Cicely's been in the goddamn bathtub for an hour. Ain't that much dirt in all Louisiana. Get out of the damn tub!
Roz chimes in to threaten her. Then Eve decides to spit fire in her direction, and she doesn't miss.
Your father works hard so we can have a house with 4 bathrooms.
Not every night he's not working. I know he's not.
Miselle swiftly removes Eve from the room and sits her down to have a conversation. Eve tells her that she knows her daddy is sleeping with other women, and that's why her mom is around here acting all nervous and cutting herself. She tells Miselle that she saw Mrs. Monroe and her daddy having sex the night of the party. What I didn't understand is why she told Eve not to tell anybody, because truth be told, everybody know he a hoe. Thus the name Dr. Feelgood. And then she tells her how much her daddy loves them and their mother. Apparently not. He cheats on your mama and cheats on her in front of you, and he knows you know, and he still don't care if you see him doing it or not. He don't even love himself. Child, why'd you tell her that bullshit? Seriously. Miselle goes on to say that her and Dr. Feelgood are one and the same, and that she doesn't have any children as proof of her ways. She goes on to say that she considers Eve, Poe, and Sicily as her kids, and how she thought one of her husbands, Maynard, had grown tired of her because she couldn't bear kids. So, the story goes she stepped out on him with Hosea, and when Hosea got tired of sharing her, he showed up at her house and confronted her husband. But instead of her husband cowering, he stood up to Hosea and demanded that he leave their home and told Hosea that Miselle wasn't going anywhere. Miselle then told Hosea she wanted nothing to do with him, and he in turn shot her husband. Sad story, but yes, her and her brother are similar in more ways than one. So we fast forward to Dr. Feelgood finally coming home, and Sicily is up waiting for him. Little does she know that Eve is also waiting up for him as well, and Sicily is clearly irritated by this. He entertains them for a while, then pushes for the girls to go to bed since it's late, and baby Sicily is pissed. We then go back to Miselle, who has an unexpected visitor at her door. He's a painter, and he's currently looking for his wife, and has been told that Miselle can help. So Miselle is able to see that his wife is somewhere laid up with another man. I'm assuming she tells him, because baby, the next thing we know, this guy's painting her and going in for a kiss. We then go back to Roz and the kids. Sicily is currently missing, and Roz is frantically looking for her. Just as Roz is on the phone with the cops, in comes Sicily in her little raincoat without a care in the world. Apparently, she went to go see her daddy, went to go get her hair done while it's raining, and is even wearing red lipstick. Child.
I walked all the way to Daddy's office, and then I caught the bus to Opal's. And I'm alive, Mama. I didn't get hit by anything.
Honestly, she had been working her mama last nerve. She had been testing her gangster for a minute, so I'm not too mad at the slap because she was really trying it. But I think it was at this point that her mother noticed that something wasn't right about her daughter and how she viewed her daddy. I think it was then that Roz finally started to understand what the psychic meant by look to your children. She had been so worried about their damn daddy that she was basically neglecting the kids and herself. And that night, baby, her and Dr. Feelgood went at it, and not in a good way. So we go back to Miselle, and baby, she must have gave him some magical love because he wants to find his wife so that he can divorce her and marry Miselle. But Miselle lets him know that she won't marry him out of fear that she will lose him, but he assures her that he isn't going anywhere. You know, we hope. So while they're being all lovey-dovey, they hear a screech of tires and run over to see what happened. Turns out that a kid got run over by a bus, and it wasn't Eve or her other siblings, but another kid from town. So Miselle goes over to tell Roz and the kids, and they are all excited before they realize that they're basically celebrating the death of a child.
It is not right to celebrate
When somebody's child is dead.
Well, whose child was it anyway?
Dickie's boy.
So Eve goes upstairs to tell Sicily the good news, but Sicily is all in her feelings because she just started her period. And Eve, being badass Eve, she decides to scream it from the mountaintops, and Sicily sees red. She chases her through the house and outside and finally catches her and slams her to the ground. I mean, she is literally trying to kill this girl. And finally, the adults come out to save poor Eve. So we fast forward to Dr. Feelgood, remembering he has a family and showing up to see what's wrong with his daughter. What's so crazy about this scene is that he showed up like a doctor and not a father, if that makes sense. He didn't seem concerned enough for me. But anyway, he goes into her room and she tells him that she doesn't want him to see her or touch her, so he promises to have a lady look at her when she's ready. I don't know, I just think it's funny how up until this day, she was obsessed with her daddy, and then all of a sudden she doesn't want him near her, and then she started her period. But what if it really wasn't her period but a response to something, if you catch my drift? I don't know though. So we go to Eve, who is on her way to the market, you know, looking for trouble per usual, and she finds it.
Excuse me? How much for this pineapple? I said, how much for this pineapple?
25 cents. You want it?
That's too much.
So while running with the pineapple, she runs by the fortune teller and instantly drops the pineapple. She doesn't want the smoke. So we go back to the home where Poe and Eve are playing, but Sicily is sulking outside. A complete 180 from how she was prior, and Roz is concerned. So concerned that she consults with a therapist to get Sicily some help. She tells Sicily that she can go stay with her grandmother who stays in another town, and Sicily surprisingly wants to go. Again, she wants to be away from her beloved daddy. I don't know. So later, Eve is pleading with Sicily to stay, but Sicily refuses and decides to tell her why. She begins to tell her what happened the night of the storm and proceeds to tell her what their parents were really fighting about that night.
Did you hear Mama and Daddy fighting that night? Part of it was about me. The other thing they were fighting about was Maddie Moreau. You believe me now about what happened at the party? I believed you then.
And this is crazy to me because you fed that girl a whole delusion and you knew she was telling the truth the whole time. Child. So she tells her what happened that night. After her mother went to sleep, she went downstairs to console her daddy. She sat on his lap and kissed him, but then he leaned in and kissed her inappropriately. And when she noticed what was going on, she pushed him and then he slapped her. Eve gets so upset at this that she vows to kill him for what he did to her. The next day, Sicily leaves, but before she drives off, she motions to Eve to stay quiet about what she told her, and Miselle notices. So later on that night, Miselle and Eve are talking outside on the porch. Eve is up waiting for her dad, and Miselle assures her that he's coming and maybe he got stuck in traffic. But Eve knows that shit is a lie. She then shocks Miselle by asking her how to kill someone with voodoo. Miselle starts to question why she would even want to know that, but Eve is not giving any details. So Miselle tells Eve to give her her hands, but she's shocked when she finds out that Eve has her gift of sight and has blocked her from seeing.
Well, go on and keep secrets if you want to. I won't squeeze it out of you.
So we fast forward to Eve's badass stealing her mama's money and heading back to the market. Before she can find what she's looking for, she runs into Mr. Monroe. You know, Mrs. Monroe's husband. The same Mrs. Monroe that's screwing her daddy. And her badass decides to plant a seed. She basically tells him, in a not so subtle way, that her daddy and Mrs. Monroe are messing around.
Maddie don't seem like the lonely type. He must get home real late. So does my daddy. Every night. My mama gets real lonely. But then, she's the lonely type. Not like Daddy and Maddie.
She then skips off to see the fortune teller and tells her up front how much money she has. Girl, you're supposed to negotiate. So she tells her that she wants this person dead, and she doesn't even tell her that it's her dad that she wants dead. But then again, maybe the fortune teller was able to pick up on this already. I'm not sure. But she tells her that she will need a lock of hair, and baby Eve already had some on deck. Anyway, so the fortune teller tells her to come back on Thursday and the spell will be complete. So baby Eve goes home and starts putting needles in a doll. I mean, with full intention. Which is obviously not working because her daddy came in without a care in the world. So when everyone's off to sleep, she heads out to the fortune teller's house. It's dark and she's out there on her own. This girl is brave. So the fortune teller asks her if her dad is dead yet, but she tells her no because she never gave her a doll. Now the voodoo lady is confused because she never told her about no doll, and basically the work has already been done.
I thought I had to do something first, like stick pins in it or...
You did something. You brought me his hair.
Eve goes off to find Dr. Feelgood, and of course he's down by the bar where the skeezers be, and baby Miss Monroe is not happy to see Eve.
Daddy, let's go home. Please, I want you to come home with me.
So Dr. Feelgood agrees to tend to his daughter, and Eve goes outside to wait for him. While she's waiting for him, lo and behold, Mr. Monroe shows up and he's on a mission. He walks up to Dr. Feelgood and his wife, and it's not good. He confronts Dr. Feelgood and asks him straight up if they're screwing around. Apparently, Mr. Monroe and Dr. Feelgood were once friends, and of course, he screwed him over. Baby, Dr. Feelgood is loyal to nobody. So, as they're walking out of the bar, Mr. Monroe tells him flat out that if he speaks to his wife again, that he would kill him. And of course, Dr. Feelgood dumbass had to test him.
Night, Maddie.
And just like that, Dr. Feelgood is gone. He in fact died by his own sword. We then go to his funeral where Eve and Sicily are understandably emotional. Eve even has a vision of the voodoo lady, but I think this was just her guilt playing with her. Sometime after, Miselle visits Eve and tells her about a dream that she had. She dreamed she was flying and she saw another woman drowning in the same air that was keeping her afloat. She then heard Dr. Feelgood's voice telling her not to look back, and she kept on flying. After her dream, she was convinced this was a sign that her curse had been lifted, and she told Julian that she would marry him. She then told Eve that her father told her that he still owed her a dance. Later, she goes into the house and she finds a few of her father's things. She comes across a letter that he wrote to Miselle detailing what happened the night of the storm, the same night that he supposedly hurt Sicily.
As you and I know, I'm just a small-town doctor pushing aspirin to the elderly. But to a certain type of woman, I'm a hero. I need to be a hero.
I guess it's why he was out here being a complete hoe.
But how, Miselle, could I have sunken your estimation to the leechy depths where you would accuse me of deliberately abusing my most beloved child?
His version of the story was a bit different. While he agrees that Sicily came down to console him and gave him that initial kiss, he then says that Sicily leaned in and gave him an inappropriate kiss, and in his shock, he slapped her and immediately regretted his reaction. After reading this, she runs to confront Sicily. Sicily insists that he in fact did hurt her and that she wanted to die. So Eve asks her for her hand so that she can know the truth. In her vision, she sees bits and pieces of what happened and not the full story because Sicily claims that she doesn't know what happened. So at the end, they decide to drown the letter and let it all go. And that is the end. And here are my final thoughts. Get a drink. I'll wait. Okay, so I know this has been a hot topic on TikTok, and I was interested in reviewing this movie so that I could see how I would interpret this movie now in my big age. I understand why there are so many theories about this movie because certain scenes can be interpreted many different ways. I see why people think that Dr. Feelgood could have done something to Sicily. I see why some people think that Eve's actions led to his death. I see why there is so many conversations going on about this film in general because it is layered, child. So here we go. Eve did not kill her daddy. The fortune teller had nothing to do with his death. Miselle had the vision before she ever received this reading, and it was already set in stone. There was nothing nobody could do about it. Dr. Feelgood's own ego did him in, period. The fortune teller told Roz from jump that an end was coming. Mind your business and look to your kids. And like I said before, Roz might have thought she didn't tell her nothing, but she told her more than enough. As for Eve, Eve was bad as hell, but she was very smart, intuitive of course, and she saw her daddy for who he was. She knew he wasn't shit. She knew everything he was doing because one, she saw it for herself, but two, he never hid that side of himself from her. This man took her with him to see his patients and slept with one of them while she was there. Like, come on. And I loved how no matter how much people tried to cover for him or provide excuses for his behavior, she wouldn't let anyone change her perception. This is why she never doubted for 1 second if he in fact did something to Sicily, because she had already seen with her 2 eyes who her daddy truly was. As for Sicily, Sicily was just cringe to watch. She was obsessed with her daddy. She wanted to be his everything. She wanted all of his attention and got extremely jealous if her siblings robbed her of having his full attention. She would challenge her mother in front of her daddy, and her daddy would never correct her or get her in line. He loved having his own personal cheerleader, and she knew that shit. She even went out and got her hair done like her mother and was wearing red lipstick, being all grown, all in an effort to not have her daddy divorce them. And that's another thing. She said divorce us, not divorce mom. That was so weird to me. And then she knew that Eve was telling the truth about seeing her daddy and Mrs. Monroe having sex, but instead she decided to feed Eve a delusion about what really happened. So that means she knew he was a cheater and that he was cheating on their mom with the whole town, and instead of having any type of concern for her mom or how like that hurts her, she still stayed 10 toes down for her daddy. I didn't get that. As for Dr. Feelgood, child, he was a hot mess, and I don't think he really cared much about his family. He definitely didn't care about his wife. After Eve caught him with Mrs. Monroe and they were having a conversation, when she asked him if he loved her mom, he gave her this rehearsed answer, and it didn't feel like it was from the heart. He did mention in the letter that he needed to feel like a superhero, and Roz mentioned that she realized that he was just a man. So maybe that had a lot to do with him cheating and being completely bold with it. To be clear, a cheater gonna do what a cheater gonna do. And Roz is not at fault for his ways. but maybe that was one of the reasons he cheated so often. To keep it a buck, he was broken. He didn't see himself like everyone else saw him. Honestly, he knew he wasn't shit. He was careless and he didn't pay attention to his family at all. He was gone 99% of the time, but somehow, some way, Sicily was always there, willing to vouch for him and his behavior. And that's another thing. Sicily, like the many women he cheated with, fed into his ego. She made him feel that he was this amazing father, a superhero, and no matter how many times he hurt her mother, was disrespectful to her mother, no matter how many nights he didn't come home, hell, no matter how many times she heard about her father and who else he was even with, she took his side and he took full advantage. And I believe the main reason he tried to minimize or talk down on Miselle and her gifts is because he knew that she was the one person that could see right through him, as Eve did, which makes sense because they both had the gift of sight. As for the night in question, now this could go either way. So let's say that Sicily is telling the truth. What could justify this is her sudden change in behavior after that night, and also the fact that she started her period, which, like I said, could have been a response to something if it wasn't actually her period. So before that night, she was literally obsessed with her daddy, and not in the most healthy way. She would wait up for him, take up for him, go against her mother's wishes, create delusions to cover up his bad behavior, so many things. She adored this man. So for her to do a complete 180 and not even want to be around him, even deciding to leave home and go stay with her grandmother when she was once all about her daddy, something bad had to have happened. At the same time, when watching those scenes, I really couldn't see any type of behavior from her daddy that stuck out enough for me. Like he didn't appear uncomfortable or like he was hiding something. It was basically business as usual. Like I mentioned before, when she started her period and he showed up to the house, he didn't act like a concerned father, but then again, he never really acted like a father to those kids. He was gone most of the time. He showed up like a doctor there to do his job. That was the only thing that was weird to me when it came to his behavior. After that night, Sicily appeared to be very withdrawn, quiet, and she didn't interact with her siblings. Nothing. She was nothing like she was before. Okay, so let's say that her daddy was telling the truth. So again, there was such a sudden change in Sicily that night, and again, she was super obsessed with her daddy. She would take up for him and go to war with her mother about him. She wanted all his attention, all his time. And if you have this super inflated image of somebody, I mean, you are just in total awe of this person and they slap the shit out of you, this innocent image that you have of them is going to change. Sicily literally thought he could do no wrong. And she probably thought that since she was the favorite and she fed into his ego, that she was above her siblings and even above her mother in his eyes. So when he slapped her, the way she saw him died. She realized, like her mother, that he was just a man. She realized that the image she had of him was a lie. She probably was in shock and didn't know a world or couldn't bear to live in a world where she wasn't the apple of his eye. In her distorted mind, she probably felt he didn't love her, or maybe she lost him and in turn she checked out. I don't know. But one thing I want to point out is that after Eve tells her about their daddy and Miss Monroe and Sicily feeds her that false scenario and really tries to convince Eve it didn't happen, that's what made me think that maybe she did the same thing when she told Eve about what happened the night of the storm. Maybe that was a clue that what she says can't be trusted. I don't know. Tell me what y'all think. Do you believe Sicily or her daddy? I'm in between. I do still wonder about a few things too. Like, is Miselle still cursed? Or did the curse fall off after her brother died? Are all the descendants of Eve cursed? Does Sicily have the gift of sight as well? And that's why she was able to block Eve from seeing all of what happened that night. And what the hell did Miselle do to the fortune teller? Because she wanted the smoke. Anyway, that's it. This was a long one, but I hope you all enjoyed. As always, thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe, and comment down below. I'm sure this movie will spark a debate. See you next time, you guys. Bye.